Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a point in every life where the noise, the distractions, the endless carousel of excuses must be silenced, and that point is now. It's time to lock in, not tomorrow, not next week, not when conditions feel right, now. Because the truth is, the brain doesn't wait for the perfect environment to change. The nervous system doesn't wait for permission. Transformation is triggered the moment you decide to channel your focus and refuse to let go. And if you don't lock in, life will lock you out. Think about it. We live in a world where attention has become the most precious currency. Billions are being spent by corporations to capture it, hijack it, addict it. Your phone is designed to fragment your mind into 1,000 little pieces. You think you're free, but neuroscience tells us otherwise. Every notification spikes your dopamine just enough to hook you, then leaves you emptier than before. Every distraction costs you more than time. It costs you willpower, mental energy, even your capacity for deep thought. And once you drain that, once you scatter it across a million meaningless fragments, you lose the ability to execute on the very goals you claim matter. Locking in is not about brute force alone. It's about rewiring the brain for single-minded focus. Studies in neuroplasticity show that when you concentrate deeply on one pursuit, the neural circuits literally thicken like a muscle being trained under resistance. The more you practice it, the more automatic it becomes. That's why elite performers in sports, business, or science seem almost obsessive. They've carved such strong pathways in their brains that focus is no longer a choice. It's a state they can summon at will. Yet most people scatter themselves so thin across endless distractions that their circuits never deepen. They stay shallow, weak, and unfocused. But let me tell you, focus isn't just some productivity hack. It's survival. In high-stakes surgery, a surgeon doesn't get the luxury of being distracted. One lapse of focus and a life is lost. In aviation, a pilot under pressure cannot afford to daydream because a split-second mistake means disaster. And in your life, every time you break your focus from your mission, you are performing the same kind of self-sabotage. You may not see the consequence immediately, but years from now, when you look back at opportunities missed, potential wasted, dreams unfulfilled, you'll realize the price of never locking in. I remember speaking to a young entrepreneur once, brilliant kid, had ideas that could have reshaped his industry. But every time he sat down to work, he was pulled into the vortex of notifications, messages, calls, emails. He convinced himself he was busy, yet busyness is the enemy of progress. Activity is not achievement. 2 years later, his ideas were no longer relevant. Someone else, someone who had locked in, executed what he once dreamed of. And the kid came to me defeated, saying, I was just waiting for the right moment. The right moment? There is no right moment. The right moment is created by relentless execution. The right moment is forced into existence by locking in when everyone else is flailing around unfocused. Science tells us something profound about this. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision-making, planning, and self-control, acts like a muscle, and just like a muscle, it fatigues. If you waste it making 1,000 small, shallow decisions, what to eat, what to scroll, what to watch, you deplete its strength before you ever get to the decisions that truly matter. That's why successful people ruthlessly eliminate distractions and automate the trivial. They lock in their routines not because they love rigidity, but because they refuse to waste cognitive resources on nonsense. They save their mental power for what builds empires, what advances science, what transforms lives. And here's the raw truth. Locking in is painful at first. It feels unnatural. Your brain will resist. It has been conditioned for instant gratification, for the dopamine hit of novelty. But pain is the price of rewiring. Pain is the signal that your brain is reshaping itself, breaking old circuits and reinforcing new ones. When a bodybuilder lifts until the muscle burns, that pain signals growth. The same is true of your focus. If you can endure the burn of concentration, when everything in you screams to check out, you are literally forging a brain that can outperform, outlast, and out-execute the masses. I'll give you an example from neuroscience research. London taxi drivers, before GPS, had to memorize the entire map of the city, every street, every route, known as the knowledge. MRI scans revealed that their hippocampus, the part of the brain tied to spatial memory, was physically larger than average. Why? Because years of locking in on navigation reshaped their anatomy. Think about that. Their very brains change size to match the level of focus demanded. That is the power of locking in. You are not just changing habits, you are changing biology. You are altering the very structure of your brain to align with your mission. And let's be brutally honest. The people who succeed at the highest levels are not the ones with the most talent, the best education, or the right family background. They're the ones who lock in so ferociously that nothing pulls them off course. They treat focus like oxygen, non-negotiable, essential, life-sustaining. They cut out distractions like a surgeon cutting out cancer because they know it spreads silently until one day it kills everything they dreamed of. I remember watching an Olympic sprinter train. This man had the weight of a nation on his shoulders, and when he stepped on the track, you could feel it. He was locked in. You could scream, clap, throw distractions in his path, and nothing would break his focus. Why? Because for years he had trained his brain and body to merge into a single target, that finish line. And that's what the greats do. They become immune to noise, immune to temptation, immune to distraction. They're not superhuman, they are simply locked in. Now ask yourself, when was the last time you locked in with that level of intensity? When was the last time you worked on something without checking your phone, without wandering, without splitting your attention? Most people can't even sit through a meal without compulsively checking a screen. If you cannot control your attention, you cannot control your destiny. And here's the devastating part. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your focus. Locking in also requires sacrifice. People want greatness without cost. They want freedom without discipline. They want the reward without the grind. But the brain does not operate that way. The circuits that govern focus are strengthened only through sacrifice. Sacrifice of comfort, sacrifice of distraction, sacrifice of short-term pleasure. You cannot binge your way to brilliance. You cannot scroll your way to success. You cannot complain your way to change. You must lock in and execute. Neuroscience shows that the brain thrives on repetition and consistency. Every time you choose to focus instead of scatter, you strengthen the pathway. It's like carving a groove in stone. At first, shallow, but with enough repetition, it becomes a canyon. And once that canyon is deep enough, your brain defaults to focus. That's why monks who meditate for hours daily develop profound calm and control. They have literally rewired themselves to lock in. But locking in is not just about achievement, it's about freedom, because when you can control your focus, you reclaim ownership of your mind. You are no longer a puppet to every beep, buzz, or ping. You are no longer enslaved by the cheap dopamine economy designed to keep you weak, distracted, and docile. You rise above it. And in that rising, you find clarity, power, and purpose. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the era of fractured attention. And if you want to stand out, if you want to build something that lasts, if you want to leave behind mediocrity, you must lock in. The world will not hand you greatness. It'll hand you distractions, temptations, excuses. But if you lock in, if you shut out the noise and pour yourself into the work, the research, the training, the mission, you will forge a brain, a body, and a spirit that no one can stop. And I promise you this, the moment you learn to lock in, truly lock in, is the moment everything changes. Your productivity multiplies, your clarity sharpens, your confidence explodes. Because you are no longer living like the rest of the world, scattered, distracted, aimless. You are living with precision, purpose, and power. So let me ask you, are you ready to lock in? Ladies and gentlemen, locking in is not some motivational slogan. It's not a catchphrase you put on a t-shirt and forget about. It's a life or death discipline for your dreams, your career, your health, and your future. And the truth is, most people will never experience what it feels like to be fully locked in. They will dabble. They will try half-heartedly. They will get distracted. They will settle. That's why mediocrity is so crowded. It's where everyone stays. But excellence? Excellence is empty space. Excellence is the rare territory reserved only for those who have the guts to lock in when everyone else is drifting. Think about what happens in your brain when you fully immerse yourself in one pursuit. Neuroscientists call it the flow state. Time distorts, self-consciousness fades, action and awareness merge. Your brain floods with norepinephrine and dopamine, sharpening your focus and heightening your motivation. You're faster, more accurate, more creative. It's like stepping into a different dimension of performance. But here's the catch. You don't stumble into flow by accident. You enter it by locking in, by shutting out everything else until only the mission remains. The people who live in flow more often are not lucky, they are disciplined. They've trained their nervous system to enter and sustain that state because they refuse to tolerate distraction. Let me give you a real-world example. A group of surgeons was studied during long, complex operations, procedures lasting 10 hours or more. Their heart rates, brain activity, and hormone levels were tracked. What the researchers found was extraordinary. When those surgeons entered flow, they could operate with almost supernatural precision, even as fatigue set in. Their brains literally rewired to keep them locked in because the stakes demanded it. And that's the same mechanism available to you. If you create conditions where focus is non-negotiable, your brain will rise to the challenge. But if you keep giving yourself an escape hatch, checking your phone, giving into procrastination, indulging every impulse, you will never build that capacity. Now let me tell you a story. A young scientist, brilliant but undisciplined, once came to me and said, I can't seem to finish anything. I start, then I get distracted, then I lose interest. I told him, your problem isn't intelligence, it's weakness. You're letting your brain run wild like an untrained dog. So I gave him an exercise. 1 hour a day, lock yourself in a room with one problem to solve. No phone, no internet, no interruptions, just you and the work. The first week, he hated it. He said his brain screamed for escape. He felt restless, anxious, even angry. That's withdrawal. Withdrawal from distraction. Withdrawal from addiction to instant gratification. But he kept going. By the third month, he told me something remarkable. Not only was he finishing projects, but his entire mind felt sharper. He could remember details better, analyze faster, and sustain focus longer. He had rewired his brain through deliberate locking in. That's the transformation waiting for anyone who commits. Let's strip this down to biology. Every time you lock in, you strengthen the prefrontal cortex's control over the limbic system, the part of your brain that craves pleasure and novelty. This balance is the essence of discipline. It's the difference between a child who can't wait for the second marshmallow and the adult who builds empires. Longitudinal studies like the famous marshmallow test proved this decades ago. The ability to delay gratification predicts success more reliably than IQ or family background. And how do you build that ability? By locking in, by forcing yourself to concentrate, even when it hurts, even when you want to quit. Each act of focus is a rep for your mental muscles, a deposit into the bank of discipline. But here's something people don't realize. Locking in is contagious. Your energy infects the environment around you. I once observed a team of engineers working on a project that required near impossible precision. At first, the room was chaotic. People checking emails, chatting, half working. But then one of the leaders decided to lock in. He shut his laptop, leaned into the problem, and didn't break focus for hours. Slowly, the others began mirroring him. The room fell silent. Everyone followed his lead. That day, they made a breakthrough they had been chasing for months. Focus is a force multiplier. It elevates not only you, but everyone around you. If you want to lead, if you want to inspire, if you want to build something that endures, the first step is to lock in yourself. You see, the brain is a pattern detecting machine. When you show it seriousness, it responds with seriousness. When you show it distraction, it fragments. And when you live distracted, you die regretful. And that's not an exaggeration, it's a scientific reality. Studies of people on their deathbeds reveal one of the most common regrets is not the risks they took, but the focus they didn't give to what truly mattered. They wish they had locked in on their relationships, their health, their purpose, instead of scattering themselves on meaningless pursuits. Don't wait for regret to teach you the value of focus. Don't wait for time to run out before you learn to lock in. I've met world-class athletes who sacrificed everything to lock in on one shot, one race, one fight. They gave up nights out, comforts, distractions, because they knew the margin between victory and defeat was measured in millimeters, milliseconds, or molecules of energy. And guess what? That same principle applies to you. Maybe you're not training for the Olympics, but you are racing against time. You are sprinting against your own mortality. And every day you delay, every hour you scatter, every minute you waste, you are losing ground. Locking in is not optional. It's survival in the only race that truly matters. The race to fulfill your potential before the clock runs out. And let me be blunt, people around you won't want you to lock in. Why? Because it makes them uncomfortable. It reminds them of their own mediocrity. When you say no to distractions, no to wasting time, no to the trivial, you become a mirror to their weakness. They'll call you obsessive, intense, extreme. They'll say, relax, enjoy life, don't listen. They're not giving you advice, they're begging for your permission to stay small. Never grant it. History doesn't remember the distracted. History remembers the locked in. Now, some of you might be thinking, but I have responsibilities, I have obligations. I can't just lock in on one thing. Let me make this clear. Locking in doesn't mean abandoning your duties. It means giving 100% of your presence to whatever you choose to do in that moment. If you're working, be fully at work. If you're with your family, be fully with your family. If you're training, be fully in the gym. The tragedy of modern life is not that people have too many responsibilities, it's that they dilute themselves in all of them, never fully present anywhere. Locking in is the antidote. It is the art of being fully alive in the task at hand. And this brings me to something deeper. Locking in is not just about external achievement, it's about internal alignment. When you lock in, you silence the noise long enough to hear your own voice. You discover clarity about who you are and what you want. Without focus, your life becomes a patchwork of other people's expectations. With focus, your life becomes a masterpiece painted with intention. That's why meditation's been practiced for thousands of years. Not to escape life, but to lock in on the present, to sharpen the mind, to cultivate awareness. Modern science now validates what ancient wisdom always knew. The ability to focus is the foundation of freedom. So here's the challenge I'm placing before you tonight. Commit to locking in on one mission that truly matters. Not 20, not 10, one. Pour yourself into it until your brain reshapes around it, until your identity fuses with it, until people look at you and say, that person is unstoppable. Because you will be. That's what happens when a human being locks in with total commitment. That's how revolutions are sparked, how businesses are built, how discoveries are made, how lives are transformed. Ladies and gentlemen, the clock is ticking. Your brain is waiting, your future is calling. It's time to lock in.